Welcome to a football show Monday edition. Happy Father's Day, everybody. That is Paul Kuharsky. I am Braden Gall, and we are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Get in the comments, everybody. We got time for questions. PK, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Hello, hello. Thank you for the adjustment. I'll take the blame for that. It's all on me today. Family.
Let's get into that. No, let's get into that.
Going on. Family life going on. Looking at cards for the kid. Turned 16 in October, and looks like we've got something. So
you're in the media though, like me. How could you possibly afford to purchase a kid for purchase a car for a kid? Or
purchase a kid for a car. Yeah,
purchase a car for a kid.
It was pretty expensive. You know, it's not
what kind of car? What kind of car?
Not from anything pouring in right now, but from wise savings at an earlier stage of life. The kind of car a Southern kid wants.
So a station wagon or a minivan.
Yeah, yes, right. Against his father's wishes, a car with a bed in the back that he can carry teammates to and from school building to the baseball facility that aren't close together. Or it could take on a fishing expedition.
Okay, so not a car. That's what I'm hearing. Is what I'm hearing. Why? Okay, let me ask you this then. Let's follow
T and an R.
Let's follow up here. I've got follow-ups here for you, PK. Why are you opposed? Because outside of me now visualizing a bunch of high school baseball players falling out of the back of the truck, why are you opposed to a truck? I think a truck is a very good.
I think it's too big. I think it's too big. I think it's impractical. I don't think it'll get used as much in the way that he imagines it'll be used. And I think he could have gotten something cheaper and certainly the price point for a used car versus a used truck is better.
Are we full size?
Well, I mean, to me, it's gigantic.
I mean, I drive a truck, but I drive a mid-size truck because I think full-size truck. I've driven a Dodge.
What's Ram a mid-size truck?
So I drove a full-size truck when I was in between cars. It took me a long time to get replacement, and it was so large I just didn't like driving it around town, which is like your F-150s, your Chevy's Silverado, your Dodge Ram, your Toyota Tundra. I actually test drove a Tundra recently. Like those are like whatever, they're all fun, but like I've never liked driving the full size. But I love my mid-size taco. I've had 3 different tacos now. I
don't even know what a taco is.
It's Trump always chickens out. No, it's a Toyota Tacoma is my car of choice. And I've driven 3 of them. I've had a Gen 2, a Gen 3, a Gen 4, and they're perfect. They're perfect for family and kids and dogs and camping and
I don't want a dog ever in the back of a truck ever, or a kid in the back of a moving truck. So
no kids.
Well, you said it's perfect for dogs and kids.
I have kids that need things to go into the like dirty bikes and dirty baseball gear and dirty dogs. They all go in the back of the truck.
I hate to break it to you, but all this stuff fits in the back of an SUV. And you close a thing and no one steals it when you park to go get something to eat. And when it rains, it stays dry.
What part of town do you live in? People just.
I'm saying if you stop at a rest stop, if you're going on a baseball trip and you throw your baseball stuff in the back of a truck and you stop at Buc-ee's, it can disappear. If you're in an SUV, it cannot disappear.
I hear you.
I don't get the appeal of the bet.
It's about having the freedom to throw a bunch of nasty shit back there that I don't want to mess up my Subaru in the back, which is basically an SUV. I don't want to mess I don't want to mess it all up with all the dirt and the wet dog and the you can haul big old stuff. Well, I can't help it that your dog's boring. It's not my fault. All right. Anyway,
it's pretty boring.
That's true. I forgot. Sorry, I didn't mean to take a shot. I apologize. I forgot about
shot at my 3-legged dog and my other dead dog.
I forgot about the lack of 4 limbs there. I apologize. But congratulations on the new vehicle for the child, which is on another note terrifying.
Terrifying.
All right, not terrifying.
They need to have a backup camera. I mean, at least we conceded that.
I agree with that. All right. So not terrifying. All of the things the Titans could be this year. It could be very interesting. There could be positive developments. Titans minicamp, of course, is done. We now have the one time of the year where the NFL is not completely dominant from a headline and media saturation standpoint. So we're going to ask some questions about this team after seeing them all kind of together in their new form, in their new version. This is the first time we've seen all these pieces kind of together, new coaching staff and new players, rookie class, etc. We're going to kind of go back and forth and ask a bunch of questions that we want to get answers to, and that I find and that you find interesting about where this organization is going in the summertime. And hopefully they get some of these questions answered throughout the course of training camp coming up, of course. End of July, last week of July is when it gets started. Is that correct?
Report the 22nd, on the field the 23rd, 4 days, and then a day off before they're in pads.
Okay. And I know you've got some other stuff you want me to ask you about as well. So we'll get into all of that coming up today on the show. Make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages, of course, 40 years in the market, a local business. This is a local business. Paul, you run a local business. We are all local businesses here. And we know that Nashville is great at supporting good local people, keep those dollars in the community. So if you're buying any beverages over the weekend, hope you guys had a great Father's Day, of course. Great. You need to buy a late gift for your father or father figure of choice, uncle, grandpa, friend, whatever. Great bottles of bourbon, great selection of beer. You can still go swing by Sinkers Beverages, and we got a big party coming up for you guys this summer, so stay tuned for that. And, of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, open 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Not today, because it's not open on Mondays and Tuesdays, but 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesdays through Sundays, or until that meat is gone. So make sure you go check out all that amazing, delicious brisket. They got the homemade sides from scratch by my guy Tony, magic green beans. And they're the only barbecue joint in Nashville with a mechanical bull. So there's that.
That's for you.
I can't tell you the last time I was on a mechanical bull. Also, free parking.
I've never been on one.
Free parking. Also very underrated in Nashville. Free parking. So make sure you go check out both of those great local sponsors. Support good local business. All right. First question you want answered, PK, is what?
How good's Cam Ward going to be? How ready's Cam Ward going to be? I think that's everybody's first question, right? And I mean, every question on offense is a spoke on the Cam Ward wheel. How good are the young receivers? How good is the protection from a revamped offensive line? I mean, we could build all of this off of that, but I think. From the off season, there was a lot of encouraging stuff. Look, the guy's got a lot of upside and all of that, but people too anxious to anoint him and for iconography of Cam Ward. First day, which was just regular football situations, a mini camp, he was very efficient. Second day with some third downs, he was less so. There was some more exotic defensive stuff thrown at him with some blitzes and the like. And the offense was not nearly as good. Third day, red zone, he was shaky. I mean, he threw 3 touchdown passes, which is great. He threw 2 interceptions, one of them absolutely horrific. If Will Levis had done it, we would be talking about it constantly. The echo of the bell would not have stopped yet. And he allowed the ball to be slapped out of his hand for a fumble. So 3 turnovers to go with 3 touchdowns. Both the turnovers, I think, would have been returned for pick sixes. The 2 interceptions. And the one where he rolled out and threw back across his body to the middle of the end zone where Cody Barton was pretty much standing alone, and then later said, hey, he's thrown a couple of those, and I knew, that's my area. And when he rolls out, he throws back across his body sometimes to that area, and I just sat tight and waited to see if he'd do it, and he did it. That's some discouraging decision making. And again, I'll say, if Will Levis did that, I understand Will Levis, last year when we were anticipating him as the starter, had 7 or 8 games of experience and should have been further along. But there were some decision-making issues with Cam Ward at Miami where he forced some stuff, sometimes got away with it, sometimes didn't. And those were the first big flashes we saw of that. So he does not come into training camp with pristine practice film from the offseason. And to the people who say, well, try everything out. That is the first cardinal sin of quarterbacking. That's not something you try out and see if it works. That doesn't work in quarterbacking in the NFL.
So I was thinking about what is the most likely scenario for Cam Ward? and just on like a probability standpoint. And the most likely scenario for Cam Ward is that he is good. Not that he's great, not that he's bad, but that he's good. He's sort of an average rookie quarterback. I think that's the most likely scenario. As a reminder, and I was thinking about this also, Peyton Manning still has the rookie record for interceptions in a season. Different time, different era, different type of game. Quarterbacks are a little bit easier to play in the system these years, and sort of the rules and everything, and expectations are different and a little higher. But Peyton Manning turned out to be pretty good, and so having the most amount of interceptions in a season doesn't preclude you from being a really great player. Although I think again, 2025 is different than 1998 or whatever. I think the most likely scenario is that he is just pretty solid. That he's just a good player, that he's clearly better than what they've had at this position, but that he still makes plenty of rookie mistakes. And I think that's probably what expectations should be. My question that I want answered, if that is the case, and we go on, to your point, all the different spokes that come off the Cam Ward wheel, what does Brian Callahan get to do differently? What does the offense... Who benefits from getting quarterback play that is just solid and will progress into something more? Because obviously that's what you do when you take somebody with the first pick. They have to be better than just solid. But you're going to get that probably this year. So my question is sort of, what does the offense get to do that it didn't get to do because now they have a quarterback who is solid or good or whatever the most statistical probability is for Cam Ward? And that's the question I want to know. And I don't know if that's short passing game. I don't know if that's down the field on first down. I don't know if that's attacking the middle of the field. That certainly feels where he's more comfortable. I think Calvin Ridley's going to have a big year. I'm curious what your answer to that is.
Well, I think you could go a lot of different directions. You hit on one big one. I wrote a big story kind of at the end. They really played the middle of the field. I mean, Cam Ward did not throw, I don't think, 5 balls that were streaks up the sideline or balls that had a receiver, a target, cutting out of to the sideline, from the numbers to the sideline. So they work in the middle of the field. Now, how critical are you of that? That's his strength. So they're carrying over his strength from Miami. Does that limit how a defense covers you? Well, I mean, if you send a guy into those spaces that he's not throwing to, it's still going to draw coverage there, right? So I don't think it's killer. I looked at Tua last year, very heavily in the middle of the field. It wasn't a good year for Miami. In that instance, you're taking away probably what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle do best, which would be streaks up this outside of the field. So, in that sense, it's not a great comparison because that's not necessarily what the Titans wide receivers do best. You'd like for him to throw everything, but if he doesn't, he doesn't. And I was told by one insider, like they left a lot on the field last year over the ball with Will Levis. So passes, short, middle, and long down the middle that were there for them that they didn't take, that they are now not going to leave.
I think it is a sign of the accuracy in the processing that he is comfortable over the middle, because I think it's a harder place to operate
to throw
in the NFL than traditionally.
And you could probably layer on that other stuff later more easily than building outside in.
Like, is it physically more difficult to stand on the left hash and hit an 18-yard out route to the opposite hash? Yes, you need Matt Stafford's arm or whatever, like Levis's arm, frankly. That is more physically difficult. But it is an easier read if you're reading half the field, or if you're reading just outside the numbers, or if you have man-to-man coverage. It is it should be easier for younger quarterbacks to make plays outside the numbers. So I think that's a sign of his processing, and a sign, to your point, of maybe Will Levis's inability to do that based on last year. And so I think, so again, start thinking about this, because I've been thinking a lot about Ridley on those crossing routes. He's hit a few of those in camp last week. I think that's going to lead to a really good season for him. And this is kind of one of my other questions, so I'm going to kind of put it all together, which is I think Gunnar Helm might be the best tight end on this roster.
Now, I think he probably is.
Is he the most complete player professionally? Probably not. Okonkwo is a more complete and polished professional athlete. But I think Gunnar Helm, and I'm biased here because I thought he was very good in college. I really liked him as a prospect. Got to chat with him at the Combine. all the things I thought about him seem to be confirmed. Titans really like him, got him at value, and everything we saw last week and everything we heard from Luke Stalker is that this is a pretty good player for his experience level. And I think athletically, while he does not do some things, what he can do, and I think what Cam Ward showed us last week, is he can attack the middle of the field. And
down the
so I think Gunnar Helm can stretch things and make things more difficult for defenses than Chig can. And so the question is sort of like, who does this benefit if this is where they're going? And honestly, does that benefit a slot receiver? Probably does. Does it benefit Gunnar Helm? Probably. I think Chig could be used in the slot with Gunnar Helm or vice versa. I don't know what Josh Wiley's role on the team is, frankly, moving forward. I think that's going to be interesting because they do need a blocking tight end. But I think those are things to look at. Who's going to attack between the numbers? And those are players I think will benefit. I don't know about where the offensive line and the running game comes in, but I got another question about that coming up in a minute. So
I don't know that there's a receiver per se who is a outside the numbers guy on this roster. Like Ridley can be an outside the numbers guy, but it doesn't mean he's not an inside the numbers guy. I think maybe we see his routes rearranged a little bit, and he's running more of those A.J. Brown type crossers in a different way, but he can run away from people. He's not going to muscle the first guy the way A.J. Brown did. He's more likely to shimmy him, right? Eddie says here in important,
I like those moves, by the way.
We should hit on. So I'm not a fan of the "it's not real football" answer. I'm not. I think that's the worst thing Cam Ward said since he's been here. He says he's not going to count the 7-on-7 interception, which is the one to Cody Barton where he threw against his body. You can't not count some 7-on-7. They spend a significant amount of the offseason playing 7-on-7 football. And I'm sure he's not taking away all the touchdowns he threw in 7-on-7 football. And you can't gerrymander the period where you did something poorly. I assure you, Titans coaches are looking at a lot of the 7-on-7, coaching the results of the 7-on-7. They've spent a lot of time coaching what's going into those 7-on-7, and you can't just dismiss it. So I did not like his answer to that. I think he's casual, and I think it speaks to the other questions here about his confidence. I don't have a problem with him being confident unless, and I'm not saying he did this in camp, but if he throws 6 picks in the first 3 weeks of the season, he's having some problems and he's still talking like, I got no problem with anything. I'm great. Well, you got to be realistic in the framework of what you're doing. But I have no problem with them saying he's a 10 out of a 10 now. None.
Yeah. So I, in theory, I kind of agree with you on the football answer. It's not real football. I think it's an easy way for him to sort of like brush away a mistake.
Too dismissive.
I tend to agree, but it's also mini camp, so I get it. But let me ask you this question about that particular comment in that play, hopefully in a way that no one else has ever asked. And that is, let's say hypothetically, he did it as in the middle of the play on purpose to boost his team's total.
It doesn't make any sense because he gets negative points.
I know, but the interception costs more for Barton than it does for him, I think, in terms of plus minus. Just just go with me on the question here, because this is totally hypothetical. I would love to know that if Cam Ward sat down in a meeting with Brian Callahan and Bo Hardigree and Nick Holes, and he says, yeah, guys, I was rolling and I saw Barton on my team and I did it on purpose for the points. I would actually genuinely love to know if the coaching staff thinks that is really impressive processing in the moment or lazy with a rep that is important. I would love to know what you think the coaching staff, again, totally hypothetical here. Yeah. If that is what he does and steps into the meeting to explain that to the coaching staff, I'd love to know how they view that in an honest moment.
I think you'd have to view it as not football intelligent. That little competition is inside football, inside the bigger football. And what's more important is the bigger football, not the smaller competition.
But you've been around a lot of like reps and then film study where like they're in the room and he looks at the coach and goes, yeah, man, I was trying to get some points for the team. And Callahan and everybody starts laughing and Callahan goes, all right, I see what you did there. Let's not do it again. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of a lot of like,
I'm not positive that the interception is more valuable than the touchdown.
I meant the interception for Cam and the interception for Cody. I assume catching the interception is more valuable than throwing the interception is negative.
I think it's a -3 and I think it's a +3. Now, if Barton went and scored a touchdown with it, which I don't know if he's credited with or not, that might be.
Cam said it was worth 6 points.
Yeah, but I think Cam was.
All right, okay. I think
Cam's math might have been off.
I'm just thinking about it in a different way, which is like, okay, so he did do that. So what? Okay, whatever. What does the coaching staff think about that when they sit down and practice and go, hey, Cam, what the hell were you doing? You know you're not supposed to throw across your body. He's like, yeah, I know. I was just trying to get some points for the team. And they're like, ha, 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 that's hilarious, Cam. Don't do that again. Like that's probably what happens. I just think that's a more interesting way to look at that particular play. I'm with you. Eddie says, do you think Ward's steadfast confidence will rub some fans the wrong way if he struggles early? You kind of already answered that. I do agree that his demeanor will rub fans the wrong way when they want him to do a certain thing. And it's like when you're upset as a fan, you want your players to be upset. When you're disappointed and sad, you want them to show that. You want to kind of see some mirroring of emotion in the situation. And I think if he's got 4 interceptions in a game, and there's a chance that he's going to have one of those games pretty early on where he makes a bunch of regular rookie mistakes, and it doesn't look like it's affecting him, I think that's a good quality, as long as he doesn't throw 4 interceptions every game for the rest of his career. And I think fans are going to be pissed about that. Not overly, but I just think it's going to, I think to Ed's the right way, rub fans the wrong way. But I've said that since the very first day of practice of seeing Cam's sort of nonchalant approach to it all. Even though he's not nonchalant, it just looks like he's nonchalant.
I'm not particularly interested in him being able to multitask where he can trash talk and listen to a play call at the same time. I think the trash talking thing with Jeff Simmons was incredibly overrated. I understand some fans soak that up for whatever reason. I think, I think there's some trash talking in a general NFL football team. I think there were fewer of those guys. I think Jeff Simmons came in and was very performative with that after missing all of the more nuanced leadership stuff, and coming in and screaming at the quarterback isn't really serving the team that well. The quarterback's not going to be screamed at that much in a general football game because people are busy working.
I think I think there's 2 things about all that whole entire stuff from last week. I think what it to me, it's sort of, what does it show about the personalities and relationships more than anything else? Number one, it's that he and the team are fairly comfortable with each other, in particular the offense, which I think is good. But really, it's about the processing, because if you ask my wife, I've never been able to listen to her and speak at the same time, and I speak for a living. So the multitasking thing is more about, like, that's a pretty good indicator as an anecdote about how well you might be able to process, which I think is the deciding factor between him and Will Levis. Like, I think that is the thing that makes him. They're both very confident, both very talented, both athletic. Will's got a slightly stronger arm, but I think the difference between the two is the processing, like for Cam Ward. So I do think I agree too much is made of it, but I think it's an example of something that could be positive for the player.
Sure. I'm all about the processing. I'm not giving Jeff gold stars for giving Cam a chance to process under some sort of
people are doing that
when it's performative. Well, they're like, Jeff really, gave Cam a battle out there. No, the battle Jeff needs to give Cam is getting in his face in the middle of a play, which he did some. And that's where the credit, not for popping off.
And that's where the trash talk started. He was kind of he bumps Cam on the rollout, and it's a sack, and then they start chat. I agree. I didn't think people were. I thought everybody was commenting and crediting Cam Ward with having sort of the wherewithal to stand up to a big snarling leader of the team, quote unquote leader. I did not realize Jeff Simmons was getting credit for that. I don't know. He's just doing his job. I don't think they deserve any credit for that.
I think there was a little bit of like, yeah, Jeff came in and really jawed with him.
All right, fair enough. All right, so that's my one of my Cam stuff. I know Cam's going to drive everything here. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages. Search Uber Eats for Sinkers Beverages and have the booze delivered directly to your house, no matter when it is, no matter where it is. Let them do the driving. You can do the drinking. Award-winning craft beer fridge, award-winning customer sort of points, sort of special points, sort of sign-up list there, in-crowd, sign up for that. You get access to all the cool stuff there for them, and award-winning staff that takes care of all your needs if you go into Sinkers Beverages. All right, you want to go ahead and ask another one? You want to go defense here?
Sure. Does the bigger edge plan work out and pan out for them? As they've, added 2 guys in Draymond Jones and I'm going to stick with this thing where I can't remember the second guy's name.
Lorenzo Carter.
Yeah. does this pay dividends for them? And Femi Oladejo is also bigger. So in revamping outside linebacker, Arden Key is the bendy light edge that I don't want to say gotten used to, but he and Harold Landry have been the guys for a couple of years now, and Harold Landry for a long time. And they don't have a quote unquote premier guy like that now. They've gotten bigger, thicker, and intend on muscling and bullying people. Is that going to work for this team?
I think it works. I think it works to a point, and I think it works in one way, which is, are they going to be better at stopping the run? I think they will be better at stopping the run. Sweat's a year older with Simmons, and then you bring in the big edges and you package it all together. And in theory, you should be better against the run. My question around that position is sort of an offense-defense question, which is, are we going to see the first signs of what Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi are sort of calling the new Tennessee Titan player, right? Like the new Titan way, the new Titan identity, pick a cliche, whatever you want to use, where he sits up there at the dais and he says, I want you to be able to see a Titan before we get him and know that that's going to be a Titan, right? With Zeitler and with the offensive line being rebuilt, with Pollard and Spears and Khalil, and then the defense getting a little bit bigger, I think they're going to be able to run the ball better. And I think they're going to stop the run better. I don't know how much, but I think they will be a little bit better. So my question is sort of like, is that going to be a sign of a new identity for this team? Or is it simply just doing the most with the resources they have in the moment? Because they don't have the other guy that, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't have the elite superstar left tackle that can pass block every play, or the superstar pass rusher. Like, is it really an identity play, or is it more of, this is the thing we have to do out of necessity rather than choice? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the necessity creating a back-endish identity, right? It's easier to find people who could stop the run, that could rush the passer. And they always talk about, you have to stop the rush in order to earn the right to rush the passer. I think they'll be better at earning the right to rush the passer. And then I think they'll fail at rushing the passer once they earn the right. So they'll earn the right more often. And then they'll fail. Now, Brian Callahan said that they missed 20 plus sacks last year. What I want is context on that, which he didn't have.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, like, what's that compared to a regular team? Is that a lot? Is that a little? It sounds like a lot for them, and they feel like it's a lot. So that's really all that matters. But what's a regular, like, what's the 16th ranked team in the league do in terms of missed sacks?
I know, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to drag down the quarterback that much this year, because I think a regular offensive tackle would prefer to try to be bullied than to fear getting beat by a blazing fast edge, who's just going to burn them around the edge. And the Titans aren't going to burn people around the edge unless Key has, a hot 3 weeks like he does sometimes.
Do you agree with the basic premise that they should be better at running the football and better at stopping the run? Like, are you kind of on board with that? So, yeah. I mean, a win rate, a better win rate on first and second down, let's just call it, should in theory translate to a slightly better win rate on third down if the defense is putting the offense in slightly more difficult situations. Whether you can pressure the quarterback, whether you can pressure the quarterback better or not. So
third and 8 instead of 3rd and 4 more often.
Right. So I do think there's something there. And while we're talking offensive line, let's go here with Diamond. Is Corey Levin ready to play center all season? No way Cushenberry lives up to the contract after the type of injury, especially when he wasn't great last year.
You're making a huge jump there, Bustin. He might be a couple games late to start. Why does Levin have to play the whole season for a guy that might be a couple games late to start? And if Cushenberry doesn't live up to his contract, well, he can still be a B- center, which, on that line should be okay, and is better than a C+ center or C center in Levin. So you're going overboard.
Well, and I think he's got this whole, renewed focus and renewed attitude on sort of what got him the first contract in the first place. And there's no way to know if that's going to be, if he can overcome the Achilles injury permanently, right? Like, is it just a short-term does he overcome it in the short term and can play most of the season and it affects him next year or the year after? Is it something that affects him right away because he's lost power and can't use the like? There's no way to know. We just have to see what happens in time.
I wrote about some offensive linemen coming back from this. You can go back at paulkuharsky.com and see. The other thing is, to me, Cushenberry's a cautionary tale. He's a veteran that came in and took too long to adjust to Bill Callahan. He wasn't there at half a season. Zeitler can't take that long and said as much. Moore can't take that long and said as much. If they need a half a season to get used to Bill Callahan, that's a bad sign.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I do think it was out of necessity, but I do think you can see the identity, and I do think they want that identity. And I it's way too early to say this. I need to see what happens in training camp, but I do think there is an edge to this team that feels a little different than this time last year. And I don't know if that's real or not yet, but Cody Barton brings an edge and a voice. I think there's a little bit more to it. I think this year
we said the same thing about.
But I don't know. I don't know.
We said the same thing about Kenneth Murray last year.
He's not the vocal. Ernest Jones came in, and that became a little bit more of that. But I don't think Kenneth Murray we ever thought was going to be the sort of vocal edge guy. I don't mean edge physically. I mean edgy. Like edgy, the way Cody Barton just kind of is constantly getting people to sort of pay attention to everything. So, all right. So if we have a situation, here's one of the questions I have. I want to know, because Ed says if Snead plays, is it possible that Baker could overtake Brownlee at the other cornerback position?
No,
so here's
Brownlee's good. I don't know why anybody would be looking to displace Brownlee outside of his handsiness. Brownlee is one of the most encouraging. I got my dog here. One of the most encouraging players on the roster.
We've asked a lot of questions about who's going to play alongside Cody Barton. That's a question we could ask in an easy way and say, what's the linebacker rotation look like? I want to know and I think Denard Wilson was asked about 5-1-5 formations, I think, last week. Yeah. I just want to know, what do the formations look like in general on the back end, whether it's 4 down linemen or 5. Whatever. I just want to know what the formations routinely look like, because if you look at the secondary, and we talked about this on Thursday's show, and you look at the corners that played most of the reps last week, you're talking about like 3 UDFAs, a 5th rounder, a 6th rounder, and a waiver wire guy. Like, those are your 6 corners that played. That's not counting Snead.
You had no Snead, you had no Baker, and you had no to little McCreary. So the only starter out there was Brownlee, who didn't have the greatest minicamp by any means. But so the back end was a bunch of guys getting experience. And I think that contributed to Cam Ward being good when he was good, by the way.
But those are I would think corners.
Yeah, I would think that you're gonna ideally. It's Snead and Brownlee outside. It's McCreary inside. And then you have variations of dime that could feature a variety of people. Ideally, it would feature your 3rd round safety, right? Because you want top 100 picks on the field and contributing as soon as possible. Yes. So I would like that to happen. Winston being out there.
This is from Eddie. Is Winston expected to contribute this year, even to the potential of overtaking Woods? I think that's the goal, is at some point during the season, he is playing regularly. I think with Hooker's being the best player at that position, being injury prone, I think it could be just as much taking his spot as it could be taking Wood's spot, in theory.
Yeah. I mean, I think his starts would come, his starts as a base safety would probably come as a result of injury, but I think they would look for ways to get him in there as a dime linebacker, as a big nickel, all kinds of things. If he's one of the 11 best, they'll find ways to get him out there.
I think he could be one of the, let's call it the 6 best to play in the secondary, like in the back end, which would include second linebacker next to Cody Barton. So yes. I think there's I'm curious what you made of the coaching staff's response to that question about 5-1-5, because that might be their best collection of players, which is an odd formation.
Don't know yet. Yeah. Look, I don't have a big problem with that second linebacker being the worst player on the defense structurally. I don't think that's their intent, but I don't think any of us are going to be particularly excited probably about Cedric Gray or James Williams or Anthony Orji, who are the 3 guys that get mentioned. Otis Reese hasn't been out there much. He had an ankle thing. The problem at inside linebacker that we don't talk about enough is, what if Barton goes down? Then you're really screwed, because if you've got no second linebacker, you've got no first linebacker if the first linebacker goes down.
Right. I honestly think if you're asking me like what is the biggest question for this entire team, I think the question is probably depth at almost every position. But that's to be expected for a team picking first in the NFL draft. Like they were the worst team in the league. They have problems on the roster. I think depth is the number one question for the team, and that's at corner, that's at edge, that's at linebacker, that's at offensive line, it's at all that. Maybe not running back. Maybe you're not worried about depth at running back, and frankly, I guess maybe with Levis and Brandon Allen or whoever, maybe you feel like, hey, Ward gets hurt a couple of games in a season that's not a playoff season. I don't even know how to analyze that part of it, but depth is the number one question here.
Jackson Edwards, he did not say that Winston would replace Amani Hooker. He said he would replace Amani Hooker when Hooker gets hurt, and Hooker getting hurt is virtual inevitability based on how Hooker plays and Hooker gets hurt. Listen.
I think Amani Hooker's the best safety. Let's make sure we're clear on this. Amani Hooker's the best safety on the team, and if he's healthy, he'll play every game.
And he's not one of the best safeties in football. He's a good safety, but that's a very Titan-centric. You don't watch enough football around the league.
But drafting, sorry, no worries, Jackson. No worries, Jackson. But drafting 82nd overall, a safety who is a high second round grade and an All-American candidate should be playing a lot of football over the guy.
It may mean that they're done with Amani Hooker after this season. Though Woods, I think, is a 1-year contract, so they'll have some choices to make at safety next year.
Woods has been a pretty dependable player. He's not great, but he's very dependable. So I think that the key is I think they have a rotation if Winston's fully healthy that allows them to be creative and do a bunch of stuff because they might need extra DBs on the field if their corners aren't healthy because we haven't seen L'Jarius Sneed exist as a human much at all in the world. And they don't have a lot of depth because, again, they're starting players right now, other than Jarvis Brownlee, and he's a 5th-round pick. I think he's good. Their corners are 3 UDFAs, a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, and a waiver wire. And I'm including Baker in that. This is not a bunch of high-invested assets. Doesn't mean they're not capable, but they're not, other than McCreary and Sneed. But, again, haven't seen those guys. So, I think what the formation looks like on the back end is going to be really fascinating from a play-by-play basis because I think there's a chance that a third safety and a third corner are on the field a lot because I think that's where they're stronger, hypothetically.
And I think that's where they're best coached. And I don't know Odin that well at all, who's the new corner coach. I just think Denard Wilson, I thought he did a very good job in conjunction with Chris Harris last year. Harris has left, obviously, and Odin has replaced him. But Denard Wilson is a defensive back as a defensive coordinator, and I thought he did very well with the DBs last year, the corners in particular.
Barton says, better pray none of the D-lines get hurt. I think that's fair, although Sebastian Joseph Day with Sweat and Simmons is a good rotation there. Ed Henry says,
and Coburn and Lynch, I have to say, I thought did pretty good work as second tier guys. I was a little concerned or confused sometimes about the substitution pattern there.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'd like to see them do better with.
Ed says, who has the best chance of replacing a starter this year? Winston, DK, Iomanner, or Helm? I think Helm is the number 1 tight end on the team right now. So if that counts,
I think Iomanner is the X receiver.
He's the best outside receiver, but also what's interesting is he also loves playing in the dirty areas. Like he doesn't mind playing over the middle. Could also be a very good slot threat as well in a very non-traditional sort of way.
But I think Lockett is the starting slot.
All right, let's see. Where else are we going here? Okay. All right. I want to know. You got any more? You want to ask another question here? Because I know you're about to talk Restrepo and special teams.
Well, let's talk Restrepo and special teams. I just think I don't see a special teams role for him. He can't be the punt returner. He doesn't have enough wiggle after he gets the ball. He could catch the ball very securely. Let's please God pray that they are beyond just wanting a secure ball catcher. And if they need a secure ball catcher, Mason Kinsey, who I don't want on the 53-man roster, they should be beyond him. I'm hoping that DK shows enough here, or quite frankly, James Prochet has gotten good reviews behind the scenes and I think has more wiggle as a punt returner. And if he makes the team as a punt returner, Kinsey's not going to be on the team and Restrepo's not going to be on the team. So he would throw a real wrench into things. But Fossil said encouraging things about Xavier Restrepo in terms of finding a role on special teams. He said, fast guys are fast and you know what they can bring you, and big guys are big and you know what they can bring you. But these in-betweeners have a lot more versatility and can really do stuff. And then I talked to somebody else and they said, listen, there are two types of coaches, position coaches or coordinators in the league. Guys who love everyone and automatically see all the good and the potential in them, and guys who hate everybody and say, I can't find anything to do with this guy. He said, Fossil is a lover. He loves everybody. He's not going to say anything bad about anybody. Don't put too much weight into what Fossil said. And so, for a minute, this was a day after I wrote about Restrepo and the limitations that could keep him off the roster. Then Fossil said that, and I said, well, maybe I'm short selling. And then this guy says, listen, if you ask Fossil about any guy on the roster, he's going to say, this guy can be a great special teamer for me.
All right, so here's my thing here's my question about returning punts in general, and I guess this is inspired by Restrepo, and that is, could you not make the case? Because I think we looked at punt returners in the 90s and the 2000s as like you need the burner, the straight line speed that can return kicks and return punts. That Dante Hall has the joystick wiggle, of course, but like guys that are just got tons of speed, right? You got to be able to run away from the defense. If you set up your punt block down one sideline, you got to be able to, I think there's a lot of value in a high floor return man. And this is what I mean by this, which is great at fielding the punt, elite, never drops it, dependable, know where you're going, and very good at making the first two guys miss. Rarely going to make the third or fourth guy miss, but is almost always going to get you 12 to 15 yards. And I think there's a lot to be said about guaranteed catch and guaranteed 12 to 15 yards in a return versus I'm taking the 1 or 2 punt return touchdowns I get every year, because you only get most you're going to get is like 2, right, in a year. So my point is, I could see Restrepo, because of his thickness and because he could probably shake a tackle or two, might be able to be one of the better return men if he can do that thing. I don't know if he can. I'm just saying I think there's value there in that as your goal for the return man. If that makes sense?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see him as a 10, 12-yard guy because I think physical people will come up and pound him. I mean, I think a linebacker would welcome a chance to come tackle Restrepo over somebody like Prochet or DK, who hopefully would have a little bit more wiggle. I don't know. I haven't seen DK do it yet. Somebody's asking, is DK just a project pick? I mean, he's a 4th-round pick who they like, who has speed. I don't know.
I think he's a high floor.
Everybody's a project pick.
I think he's a high floor. I think he's a very high floor guy. I don't think he's ever going to have a high ceiling. I think he's a fast, dependable player who's a very smart football player, frankly, which is that's the Titan thing that they're telling us about, like fast, dependable, that kind of thing. I do think Restrepo, again, I think he can shake tackles. I think that's the issue. Is DK easily tackled, or is Restrepo's strength and power give him a chance to break a tackle or two? That's the only question I have. So we can move on. Here's my question about special teams, because I think they are improved there as well. I think they are going to be better. But my question to you is, what is the actual value in your win-loss record for having some of the better special teams? Does it make a great team elite? Does it win you a playoff game? Yes, absolutely it can. But does great special teams, can they take you? Let's say the Titans are a 6-win team this year. Could great special teams make them an 8-win team? Could bad special teams make them a 4-win team? I'd love to know.
I'd say that for sure. Bad special teams can make them a 4-win team, because bad special teams last year took a 5-win team and made it a 3-win team. Don't you think?
Yeah, probably. But can the good make you like that much better? Or does it keep you from sucking in certain moments, like missing field goals with, 37-yard field goals, or fumbling punts, or getting a punt blocked, or, whatever the bad end of the spectrum might be? Because I think they're going to be better. I think they are a better special teams team this year.
I do too, and we'll see the difference. But you got to start by not killing yourself. So this year's team, I don't expect to kill itself, though I have concerns about Sly. And Fossil talked about this. Usually you picture a big-legged guy and you think he'll be wild, shorter. So, you can't miss the 37-yarder in exchange for having a chance at the 60-yarder. And the Titans generally haven't taken that that chance. This is a turn of events if he's their guy. And it'll be very interesting to see how that pans
out. He's got the ball comes off his foot differently though than any of the kickers I've seen at camp the last few years. He's got some pop to the leg. Barton says the bottom of this roster sucks, so our special teams isn't going to be light years better, even with a new coach. Do you think they're not being smarter about how they're picking the bottom of their roster though to make that a better part of the team?
Well, I'd say the suckiness of the bottom of this roster is better than the suckiness of previous bottoms of the roster. They've paid 4 guys over $240,000 in guaranteed money as undrafted rookie free agents. Not something that they've done in the past. So that's an investment that they haven't made. Those guys should be better back of the roster players, presuming they make the roster. If they don't make the roster, they're going to be on the practice squad. In all likelihood, if they're not on a Titans practice squad, at the very worst, they're going to be on somebody else's practice squad, which offsets some of those guarantees. But they've been talking about building bottom up. You have a lot more opportunity to get bottom players than you do to get top players. So that makes a little bit of sense. And then I think they will pick better the last 6 players on the 53-man roster when last year they had utter disregard for it.
What other? I know you got a couple more here before we kind of move on to a last topic here, but I just am curious what else you would like to. What other questions you want answered here on a football show Monday edition, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue.
Yeah, I was curious about this camp time away. It's only 9 nights, I think, but they're going to go to Tampa Bay, have a practice with Tampa Bay, have a day off. Have a game against Tampa Bay, fly straight to Atlanta, have a day off, have a light practice day, have 2 practices against the Falcons, have a day off, play the Falcons, come home. Brian Callahan wanted to take camp on the road. They looked at 2 venues in California. They looked at Greenbrier up in West Virginia. They couldn't make it work. So this is his alternate to that, create some boredom. Some time away, not just practice time, but time where you just have each other. Kind of picking up off of this off-season bonding stuff. How much value do we see in that? And I think there's some.
I think it allows. It's funny. Like in hockey, there's a lot of talk around teams bond when they go on long road trips because it's your life is so much more structured. Like your meals are here in the morning in particular, they're together. Then you have a flight and travel plans that are together and you're together. And then and hockey's different because you're traveling like almost every 2 nights or every 3 nights at almost minimum. And I talked to Roman Yossi about this and I said, hey, what, does that actually happen? Do you actually bond on the road and like build rapport and get to know each other? Does it help you guys actually execute in a game? And he said, yeah, there's moments where it really helps because you're all together at dinners and you're getting to know the younger players and they're getting to know you. But like a lot of times you're breaking up into groups. You're going to do like your 4 buddies are going to go have dinner here and you 8 friends. The offensive line is going to go over here. And Yossi happens to be a guy who is very much a boring homebody. Like he's just a boring guy. I say that as a compliment. And he told me, he goes, yeah, I actually am better at home because I prefer to go sleep in my own bed and see my daughter and see my son and see my kids and see my family. And I function better in that environment than while I'm away. But he said, but I read more, I meditate more, I do more yoga, I have more time to sort of self-care. So I thought that was interesting. And I'm using all that as a, this is different because you're only traveling like from Tampa, you're going to Tampa and you're coming to Atlanta and then you're coming home. So it's not a lot of travel, but it is, 3 travel times. I don't know how many meals you're going to have together. Are you all playing cards and video games in the hotel every night? Like, I don't know what that structure looks like that develops into bonding in that situation. Be good.
Well,
questions.
There will be some events, some intentional team events and the like that Callahan is setting up to be intentional about it. So it's different than traditional camp. And he said, guys going home at 5:30 doesn't feel like camp. It feels like a practice day. So he's looking for something different than that.
All right. Anything else? I mean, there's tons of other questions about this roster and about this thing, but there's stuff that you kind of think through as you're coming out of a mini camp like this. And it's a lot about Cam Ward, of course. It's a lot about what is he seeing and what is he learning. It's a lot about their structure of the offseason. A lot of it's about Their offensive and defensive lines developing. I think there's a lot of questions around the formations in the back end on defense, cornerback depth, special teams, the actual impact of that. Lots of great questions. Anything else you want to that's knocking around in the old what's the Anchorman quote? Like just knocking around the old noggin up there.
Well, I think this last Jackson Edwards question is interesting. He said, can't they just sign a bunch of no-name guys like Vrabel did? I mean, those type of guys play hard. Vrabel's got the best out of guys who were on 8 teams in 5 years. They were doing that because they didn't have good guys. You don't go into that saying that what we're going to do is sign a bunch of no-name guys and make that work. Vrabel was really good at making that work for a while. Then it ran out of gas because they were asking too much of too many and they didn't have enough of a spine. But you can't say that's our team building strategy. That's our team building strategy when everything goes to shit. And when we draft guys who can't play 4 first rounds in a row. That's what happens when we draft Monty Rice and to replace Jayon Brown. That's our strategy when everything goes to hell. That's not our team building strategy.
Yeah, fair, tough but fair. I agree with you. Bustin says, is this just a foregone conclusion that the offensive line will be bottom half of the league this year? Again, I feel like the center position isn't getting discussed enough. I do think you asked about the center position, and then we discussed it for the record. Yeah. I think you need to think in thirds on this. They have been in the bottom third of the NFL along the offensive line, if not worse than that, for a long time. They need to be into the middle third. They need to be between 12 and 21, something like that, between 10 and 20. If they are in the middle, which is an average offensive line, then I think they will have taken steps forward, made progress, and will be better. And I think that's the right thing you want. And if it's more Kuharsky and Latham that are doing that, then you have something longer term that you can build off of.
I think it's reasonable to expect them to be a touch above middle of the pack. So 15, 14, 13, in terms of overall play for the offensive line.
That would be huge. If they are the 13th best offensive line in the NFL, that would be a massive improvement.
They should be there based on the investment they made in Moore. That's what they're telling us they think of Moore, not what Moore's metrics are telling us. That's 2 first-round picks in Latham and Kuharsky. That's the biggest free agent deal for a center in last year's market. Yes, he's recovering from an injury. And that's Kevin Zeitler, who's been on some damn good teams, despite the fact that he's aging. The collection of people that they have there, if they're not going deep, if they're a healthy 5-pack, is a collection that warrants being 15th, 16th.
No, it's not complicated. You have a number 7 overall pick, a number 11 overall pick, an $80 million free agent, the number 1 center free agent from last year, and a perennial All-Pro. That's your starting 5. It needs to be better. I mean, I agree. The question is, again, I think the difference in a good season and sort of another disappointing one potentially within the confines of expectations, which to me is 5 to 8 wins ballpark. If they are the difference between being the 13th best offensive line or 12th and being like the 20th or 21st could be 2 or 3 wins. That's the difference for the offense. The offensive line will probably define Cam's season and the offense's season and the team season and everything else. So,
and I thought they brought in decent competition for Levin. I'm surprised Levin has established himself so much as the backup. Sam Mustipher has started like 40, 45 games in the league to Levin's 5. Hasn't dented him. Hymas, another guy that's played games in the league. And those guys, Corey Levin has done everything he needed to do to stay at the top of the replacement line.
All right, last couple here. First of all, are you watching the FIFA Club World Cup? Your boys, Chelsea, up 2-0 right now.
I'm not watching it. Thanks for ruining the score for me. I'm not watching it like religious appointment watching. I'm watching it because it's a TV product that had some compelling games. I watched the end of the opener with Inter Miami. That was
good.
Very compelling 0-0 draw. But I think it's a complete bullshit made up event for FIFA to steal money from people.
Are you more excited and interested in the Gold Cup now after a 5-0 win over
I
Trinidad
think
and
that
Tobago?
they're getting credit for that win is complete bullshit. This team is a mess. That's what
bad.
the U.S. should do to Trinidad and Tobago. We finally do it, and now we're going to celebrate it like it's some big event. Look at the Switzerland game, not the Trinidad and Tobago game.
I mean, I was there. It was one of the worst displays of United States soccer in the history of my life. It was awful.
They're doing cartwheels over beating Trinidad and Tobago, population size of a quarter of Delaware?
Jacksonville. My 7-year-old takes their hat off after the second goal and slams it down when the Swiss totally dissected a pathetic defensive performance by the U.S. men's national team. All right, how many Titans fans do you think know and can explain to you who Bryce Wasserman is?
After today, if you're smart, you'll be able to explain it. I wrote a piece about Bryce Wasserman today. Bryce Wasserman is Chad Brinker, who I don't think enough Titans fans could tell you who he is. Chad Brinker, the president of football operations, is oversees all things football. And he has a chief of staff named Bryce Wasserman. Bryce Wasserman's an interesting character. He came into the team, quite frankly, because he was dating Blanche Strunk, who is Amy Adams Strunk's daughter. And he will be marrying Blanche Strunk this weekend. So he's about to become an Adams family in-law. You should go to paulkuharsky.com and read about Bryce Wasserman, who was a professional lacrosse player. He's got an MBA. He's got a law degree. He's a smart guy to hear everybody talk about him. It's also kind of weird what he does and does not do, including catching passes from the receivers from the quarterbacks before the receivers are available at practice. And you can see some film of that in my piece.
Nobody knows what he really does. He was, so for the record, at the Senior Bowl, first time I met him, it was at the Senior Bowl, and we're walking around the field, and which may or may not be illegal, but whatever. We're walking around on the field, and even like, the Titans media staff, like one or two of them is down there with the cameras kind of shooting stuff, but most of them are kind of up in the seats, and the agents are up there and everything. And the one guy who is walking around with Brian Callahan for most of the entire practice is Bryce Wasserman. It's the first time I met him. So what does he do? We'll see.
Barton says he's a Miami lacrosse legend. He was a Monmouth lacrosse legend. He went to law school in Miami. Unless he played some of his professional lacrosse in Miami, I think you're geographically off.
I think the lacrosse stuff is more like like Carolina North, up to Johns Hopkins and all those lax bros up there. Anyway, good stuff. Go check it out. PK.com, of course. Go support good local journalism, support good local business, Sinkers Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. And of course, support all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network. We still have tons of coverage for you throughout the course of the next couple of months, even though there'll be less Titan stuff. So Nick and I are still coming on Thursdays. Paul and I still on Mondays. And of course, check out all of his work at pk.com, paulkuharsky.com. Anything else?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'm good.
Always a pleasure.
Got to get back and sign some papers.
That's right. Godspeed to young Mr. Kuharsky, and to you, sir. Good luck with that. I'm so glad I have many years to go, and that young people hopefully won't be driving vehicles. We'll just be just riding bikes and
stick with the bikes. Stick with the big wheels and the bikes.
There you go. Thanks everybody for hanging out in the comments. Do appreciate you guys. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. For Paul, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk to you.